Today's video is sponsored by Steelseries. Fellas, we are partnering with Steelseries this month to give away 2 of their brand new Aerox 5 wireless mice. This is a dope looking mouse with non-programmable buttons, 5 of them being side buttons, Steelseries 1-to-1 true move air sensor, and of course, it's extremely light, weighing at only 74 grams, and let's not forget about that delicious RGB. It's got over 180 hours of battery life, only takes up to 15 minutes to actually get a full charge. It's also water resistant, which I don't think you're going to be taking this into the hot tub with you or anything, but if you got sweaty palms, its IP54 rated aqua barrier technology will keep the mouse safe. Now, in terms of technology when it comes to wireless mice, this is really what separates these different mice, right? Quantum 2.0 is actually the tech that Steelseries use, allowing to have super low latency and the ability to switch your connection types between 2.4 gigahertz or Bluetooth 5.0, depending on your needs for industry-leading power efficiency and rock-solid stability. Fellas, if you're interested in buying this mouse, and I am one who has been married up for years to Razer for the longest time, this is a mouse that has replaced all of them for me. For Destiny, other games, MMORPGs, editing, this mouse has become the universal mouse for me. So again, down below in the description will be a link to this mouse, as well as 12% off on all Steelseries products. Now back to the video. Can you believe it, guys? Season 17 is right around the corner. We're only about a month away, and I know it's kind of wild to think that Season of the Risen is on its way out, especially given the fact that Season of the Lost was literally 6 months long. Now, the story for this season should be wrapping up, and we'll probably get some conclusion to everything probably in the last week of this season. And we've had some developments, with Kaido and her scions helping us learn from the Lucent Hive by entering their mindscapes. Crow and Saladin have garnered a rather interesting relationship, focused around Saladin's past and how his life's lessons that he pushed onto Crow might alter Crow's future. Crow definitely altered Saladin's future though, as he's now serving Kaido as Valis Forge, after he gave up his freedom so Crow wouldn't be executed as a result of his accidentally murdering the scion that was helping us understand the Lucent Hive plans. And again, that wasn't just any scion. That was like, you know, like Kaido's favorite scion. Like they grew up together. They went to the same school, that kind of thing. But this leads us to the question of what comes next. What will Season 17 have to offer in terms of story and gameplay? Now, we've collected a series of lore pages, new and old, some previous TWAB info, and a bit of team-wide speculation. And that, when combined together, hints at multiple epic story threads coming in Season 17. Story threads that not only focus on a very popular Destiny character finally being brought into the spotlight alongside a rework to Iron Banner, but also of a mysterious Guardian colony located far beyond the Jovian planets, and a return, or rather reincarnation, of a powerful AI known as the Tyrant, the Warmind, or Rasputin. Now, in order to pull all this lore and speculation together into something easily understandable, first we're gonna have to catch you up on some of the past stories in history. That way, if you're a new light player just less acclimated to Destiny's lore, you'll be able to tag along without being confused. And if you're a regular player and know some of the basics, this will act as a nice refresher. So first on the docket, the Iron Lords. Now, there was a period of time between the beginning of the collapse and the City Age called the Dark Age that this era gave rise to light bearers revived by the Ghosts, imbued with the Traveler's light and accountable to no one. And the Ghosts have been deployed by the Traveler as a final defense in wake of the collapse. But instead of using the light to fight for humanity, most of the Risen used their newfound power to rule it instead, taking over various parts of Earth, still nurturing human life. These fresh light bearers who decided to subjugate the world became known as warlords. Injustice reigned for a time as multiple warlord-led factions fought over land, forcing mortals without the light to live under their tyranny. Over time, a band of guardians chose to stand up and combat these warlords in the name of good, eventually defeating the warlords or driving them away. Now, these guardians were known as the Iron Lords. Now, after a long conflict, the Iron Lords dedicated themselves to defending survivors of the collapse, as well as rebuilding what humanity once had. They assisted greatly with the construction of the walls of the city and defended those walls against ongoing fallen attacks. Unfortunately, all but 2 of the Iron Lords were wiped out during an attempt to recover Golden Age tech known as SIVA, a self-assembling, self-replicating nanotechnology developed by Clovis Bray, aka the Gunsmith. Now, SIVA's original design was to assist in the construction of extrasolar colonies to accelerate humans' colonization efforts across new and distant planets. Essentially, SIVA is able to create anything, and it would be used to quickly create structures and colonies across new worlds. Now, during the collapse, the SIVA tech was lost and locked away in a bunker with Rasputin. Rasputin was first called R and was solely designed as a safety AI for the Ares 1 mission to Mars back before the Golden Age, until Clovis Bray took his code and programmed it into an interplanetary defense system with sentience during the Golden Age. He was designed to foresee potential threats to human civilization and to leverage military assets for its protection if the need arose. He's the prime defense system for humanity and the most powerful military intelligence ever developed. And I think a lot of us overlook Rasputin, by the way, because we're just like, all right, whatever, Warmind, cool. cool, but old Rasputin's got some stroke. Now, Rasputin began to think on his own and act on his own accord and develop his own morality. And in order to better understand the world, Rasputin executed a protocol during the Golden Age called Siddhartha Golem. The direct outcome of this endeavor was the creation of an exo that was sent out into the world to study humans, their behavior, their literature, their culture, to then relay that information back to Rasputin. This exo was destroyed though during the collapse, and Rasputin, while alive, went dormant when he surmised it was statistically impossible for him to defend humanity against the incoming darkness. Now, he lay dormant throughout the Dark Age until the Iron Lords reopened bunkers across the Cosmodrome, searching for Golden Age technology so that they could rebuild what humanity lost during the collapse and bring about a new Golden Age. Unbeknownst to the Iron Lords though, Rasputin used Siva as bait to lure his field exo project security threat and now Iron Lord Fellwinter into a trap. Upon opening the Siva replication chamber, Rasputin gave Siva 3 commands: replicate, eliminate, immunize. Now, Siva attacked the Iron Lords and Fellwinter, infecting them, turning them against one another, and almost all of the Iron Lords and Iron Wolves sacrificed themselves to seal away Siva before it could leave the bunker, resulting in only Lord Saladin surviving the encounter. There's so much more to that storyline, but those are the basics that you need to know to understand how Rasputin and the Iron Lord stories are forever intertwined. It is also very difficult to talk about one without referencing the other. Now, although there are many stories and lore pages recounting many of the Iron Lords and their history, a couple names stand out above the rest. Obviously, we know about Lord Saladin, one of the 2 remaining Iron Lords, who has had a relatively major part of the season's storyline, and who usually shows up for a week every month to run Iron Banner tournaments. This tournament being held in honor of both the Iron Lords and Iron Wolves. Now, if Lord Saladin is one of the 2 remaining Iron Lords, and who's the other? Well, her name is Lady Efrideet, and there's a big chance she'll be the focal point of Season 17's story. Now, who is Lady Efrideet? First off, she's a fan favorite in the Destiny universe. She's constantly mentioned in almost every single expansion somewhere in the lore, but she's only ever appeared in game once. During Rise of Iron and Destiny 1, Lady Efrideet took Saladin's place, running the Iron Banner as he assisted Guardians during the Siva Crisis. Not to be confused with the previously mentioned Siva versus Iron Lord conflict, the Siva Crisis was when the Fallen got their hands on Siva, resulting in the entire plotline of Destiny 1's Rise of Iron expansion. This was the only time she was seen in-game, as prior to the Rise of Iron. She was presumed dead. Now that we talked about Rasputin, about the Iron Lords as a whole, and briefly went over their part of the Destiny's lore, let's take a step back before the Iron Lords fell to Siva to touch on Lady Efrideet's history with the Iron Lords and why she's a legend amongst Guardians. Lady Efrideet is nothing short of legendary, and many stories depict her as an absolute baddie, even if she is just a hunter. But I want to start by reading this tale from the Dark Age, one that takes place with Efrideet and Saladin atop a dusty cliffside. Cloak of Remembrance lore entry excerpt. The 2 hear the roar of the fallen skiff before they see it tear across the sky. It releases a walker, which drops into the field like a meteor, digging deep into the gravel in front of the bunker. The walker begins to unfurl its legs as the skiff takes off, heading to the blooming eruptions of conflict in the distance. Efrideet grows impatient. Come on, you have any ammo? I have light. Saladin tosses the rock in his hand and opens 2 palms writhing with arc bolts, but it's out of range, even for me. We'll have to take the long way down, as if there's time. Below, the walker begins a march across the field. I could throw you. Saladin emits a single sharp laugh. When she says nothing, he turns to stare, realizes it's not a joke. There's no dignity in that. Is there dignity in letting those people die? Saladin doesn't respond. He looks down the mountainside. Saladin looks down the mountainside at the tank, then to the village, his fists tighten at his sides as the air around him begins to crackle. If you miss, he stops speaking as Efrideet grabs him by the metallic collar, pressing him over her head. Arc energy from both light bearers coalesces, and a roaring storm around them. Saladin crackling, barely contained. Efrideet's flowing, guiding. The mountain rumbles beneath her as she steps forward. Waves of gravel and dirt blast up behind her as she hurls the armored man off the cliffside like a javelin. Their combined arc energy singing like a drawn sword. Saladin's gilded form becomes a cannon shot, tearing holes through 3 layers of clouds as he rips down toward the fallen walker. Hey, fellas, code of the missile was invented just then. Long story short, guys, Lady Efrideet is a baddie, man. She straight up yeeted Saladin off a cliff into a fallen walker, and some other lore entries include that she quite literally never missed a shot with her long rifle once the enemy was in her scope. She also defeated the Titan Sidon and his fire team during a confrontation in a bar at a base of Fellwinter Peak. That's right, Sidon, that Sidon, Sidon's ramparts. Oh, and by the way, the bar that this confrontation took place in was owned by none other than the Drifter himself. Back then, he went by the name Wu Ming, but he ran a bar and watched Lady Efrideet absolutely wreck Sidon and his fire team in a 1v3. Here's an excerpt from the Loose Ends Part 2 lore entry, released in Season of the Drifter, depicting this exact moment. Wu Ming, aka the Drifter, looked on as the warlords surrounded the lone Iron Lady. End of the road is Wolves territory, Efrideet was saying, and so is the entirety of Felwinter pink. That changes to night. A crescent of light arcs between the warlord's open hands. I have an army of raiders and a fire team of risen waiting on my command. Felwinter's lost his mind siding with you. Underneath the helm, Sion's eyes flickered from the Iron Lady to his warlord's ally positioned behind her. The flanking warlord raised a massive hand and thundered a bullet directly into Sion's chest. As Efrideet dropped to a knee, she swung her cannon to her right side with her left fist and let loose with a roaring double tap behind her, shattering the rear warlord's head. Wu Ming saw that she hadn't so much as looked. The third warlord's submachine weapon fired a spray of bullets that hammered the floor as Efrideet rolled. Wu cursed inwardly as wood splinters went flying all over the room. People screamed, but it was already over. The third warlord crumbled. Efrideet's solar knife had divided his head. "Halt!" the lady barked, firing her cannon into the ceiling as three ghosts materialized above their charges. Bits of wood fell on her shoulder. Wu Ming cursed audibly this time. "You know who I am," she shouted at the room. "At this distance, I could shoot all of you out of the air swifter than you can even bring your risen back." The traveler's children froze, their shells spinning aggressively in the air like metallic bees. "You're free to go," she told them, "but your risen stay with me. Follow the Iron Decree and you'll get them back in time." The ghosts looked at one another. "Tell the warlord," she sneered, "Felwinter's peak belongs to the wolves." All right, so I think you're getting a general idea of how nasty Efrideet is, right? She scared ghosts away. She straight up left their guardians dead on the floor in Drifter's Bar, and nobody wants to mess with her, especially after that. Now, she was also the direct reason for why the last city was built in the first place, and she convinced the Speaker, who was one of the three representatives of a small settlement of people who were once ruled by the warlord Cathal, hope I'm saying that name right, to join her and the Iron Lords at the last city, a place where risen and non-risen could live together in harmony and peace, a place that the Iron Lords wouldn't rule over or dictate like the warlords did, but instead protect, leaving the governing and decision-making up to the people, as it should be. And this eventually resulted in a long-term friendship between Lady Efrideet and the Speaker. There was a point, though, where Lady Efrideet began to change. She began to grow tired of the endless cycle of killing. She began searching and hoping that she'd find a way to break it. We get first sight of this from the Iron Forerunner grips, gauntlets, and gloves lore entry that was added during Season of the Lost. An excerpt of it reads, "Saladin remembers burying bodies by the dozens. He remembers being thankful that the ground had thawed early that year so they wouldn't have to burn them. Fires brought light and smoke, and light and smoke brought fallen raiders. Fallen raiders brought more bodies. It's a vicious circle," Efrideet has said, as she tied off a funeral shroud with great care. Saladin remembers the bundle being very small. "One day, I'm going to break it." Saladin remembers how easily the body fit into his arms, how light it felt as he laid it in the grave. He remembers with shame, pretending not to hear Efrideet's words so he wouldn't need to respond to them. In the Season of Dawn, we also got a lore entry as part of the lore book Constellations, where Efrideet is having a conversation with the Speaker on a balcony in the last city. Now, this takes place right before the Iron Lord's conflict with Siva. An excerpt of this conversation reads, "That's why you want to leave the city?" the Speaker asks, instead of condoning the proposal. "You're the one who convinced me to come here." "I'm glad I did," Efrideet says, lifting her chin. "But no, that's not it. There's something about this life that isn't working for me. Seems to me that a guardian should have more ways of marking this world than with a gun. That's not how I think of you." She pauses, then leans on the railing. "Sure," she says, "but it's stuck in my muscle memory all the same. Hundreds of years of pointing and shooting." "Speaker," she shakes her head, "I don't know what it is yet, but I want to find a different way." This conversation feels so familiar. I was so young the last time we had it. "I understand," I say, softer now. "That's a noble cause." She shrugs, "And maybe I come back with a little baby Speaker." She doesn't say it, but the "if I come back at all" hangs in the air between us. "I would appreciate your help," I say finally. "I can't wear this mask forever." Now, sometime shortly after this conversation took place, before the Iron Lords were defeated by Siva, Efrideet left the last city in search for a new way to make a difference. Now, as we attempt to follow Lady Efrideet's past via lore entries in sequential order, the next entry comes directly from Efrideet herself when she appears during Rise of Iron. As she serves as the new Iron Banner representative, while Saladin is devoting his attention to Siva and the Fallen, she urges Guardians to see the Banner Tournament as a chance to strengthen their light for fighting and for more metaphysical purposes. This is depicted from a quote from Efrideet during an Iron Banner quest step that reads, "To me, the Iron Banner is a way to prepare yourself for a unique purpose. And without purpose, all of our strange, wonderful powers are meaningless." After I left the banner, my agelessness felt like a burden. Only when I found new purpose was I able to make good use of my powers again. Efrideet found what she was looking for. She found this new purpose, and she found it within a community of pacifist guardians somewhere far away in the Outer Rim. Multiple lore entries and quest steps detail that Efrideet is open to sharing her experience with these guardians and her new home, and what the group's pacifist philosophies are like. But she refuses to disclose the settlement's location to anyone, including the Vanguard, who are very intrigued by this non-militaristic guardian community located in the deep system that nobody besides Shiro 4 has even heard about. Now, a quote here from Shiro 4, "I heard rumors about guardians running away to the Outer Rim. realm. Dissenters, bug huggers, pacifists. Never gave it much thought. Surprised people like that could have stayed hidden this long. Now lastly, we know that Efrideet battled her old doubts and way of thinking when Guardians lost her light after Gaul trapped the Traveler during the Red War. We have a lore entry from the Cosmic Ghost Shell that reads, "The old doubts came back when the light went out. But the iron in her bones, worn and rusted as it was, never buckled. The light was gone, but holding a sniper rifle still felt right." She marched into the city beneath a refugee's hood, took up roost in the building with a white rabbit, and killed 216 Cabal with 199 bullets. She cried when the Traveler woke before her eyes. At her hip, a radio blinked to life. It had gone quiet when the Red Legion attacked. She answered it with trembling fingers. "I know," she said. "I can see it. I can feel it. Even the stars are brighter now," said the voice over the radio. "The whole cosmos is ablaze." She closed her eyes. "I can't wait to see it. I'm coming home. Efrideet out." The home that she mentions is that same pacifist colony in the Outer Realm. So the last we hear of Lady Efrideet is of her returning after Gaul is defeated. This snippet of lore also gives us a unique perspective on Lady Efrideet's ideals. Even though she lives as a pacifist, she is willing to once again pick up a rifle and fight to defend humanity when the need arises. Now that we've addressed Efrideet's backstory, let's rewind and collect some more intel about the warmind Rasputin, who has had a ton of story-related implications happen over the course of Destiny 2. Now during Season of the Rivals, Anna Bray had to store Rasputin inside an experimental pillory engram after he shut down suddenly when he tried to defend against the approaching pyramid ships. A man just got overloaded. Ever since he was downloaded into the pillory engram, Anna Bray has been trying to transfer Rasputin into an exo body, but he has failed with each attempt. This season, we got some lore where Anna Bray used the Scion's mindscape to enter Rasputin's consciousness and determine why she couldn't initiate the transfer successfully. There she found a Valkyrie javelin, a weapon created by Rasputin, surrounded by thorn and rot. This could indicate that when Rasputin attacked the pyramid ships, he was corrupted by them. As we see the same thorn, bramble, and rot sprout out of Rourke and the Caretaker when they're defeated in the raid. Now this finally brings us to the snippet of text hinting towards the future of Season 17. After you complete the final mission on the investigation board at the Enclave this season, you're met with this transcript that was uncovered from the time wounds on Mars. It reads, "To Ikora, here's the AI Rasputin protocol transcript we picked up from the wounds. According to this, before initiating Yuga Sundown, Rasputin killed all protective measures in place for human colonies and settlements. There's a big list of code names for the Moon, Mars, Earth, and Exodus ships, etc. But Rasputin also refers to a place called Nefele Stronghold. No record of that in any of our databases, forwarding to Anna Bray for a cross-reference. A follow-up message from Anna Bray brings up more questions than it answers. To Cha 319, no hit on Nefele Stronghold in any of Rasputin's records. Can't even find the original transcript you're quoting. If it's real, someone moved all traces of it. And if they did it so cleanly that I suspect Rasputin himself. No action items on this case, just an unsatisfying label of unsolved. Now, Nefele Stronghold is the important bit here. This stronghold has never been mentioned by name before in the history of Destiny's lore. Probably because Rasputin never wanted anybody to know of his existence, even him, as it seems likely that he wiped it from his own records. The name Nefele, spelled Nefele, has roots in Greek mythology. I'm probably butchering these names, by the way. Nefele is a cloud nymph created by Zeus and is featured most prominently in the story of Phrixus in Hell. We won't go over the entire myth here, but what's important to note is that Nefele's children were at one point being hunted down, and she attempted to rescue them with a flying golden ram and sent them off to a place where they would be safe. This could be interpreted in multiple ways. Rasputin may have named the stronghold Nefele because that's where a copy of him can be found, like a copy saved in the cloud. Or Nefele's stronghold could contain something that Rasputin is protecting, going as far as to wipe it from his own records so no one ever locates it, much like Nefele in Greek mythology, who tried to protect her own children by sending them far away. And stronghold is an interesting word choice as well. It could be a city, a fortress, an outpost. We don't know. What we do know is that we are getting a new dungeon next season, and those two words seem pretty interchangeable to me. I think it's very likely that we'll be visiting the stronghold in some capacity in the near future. Now let's take a quick detour and look at one of Savathun's 2 lies, 2 truths puzzle.
I want to play a game. 2 lies, 2 truths. The Pyramid Blade is one key to defeating the Witness. The Witness seeks the final shape, and the final shape is nothing. The last city is not the last city. The Witness will build its army on Mars. This one's tricky. Let's see if you can crack it.
Now, the last city is not the last city. That's what we're focusing on here. Let's take this statement as a truth. The last city is known as the literal last city where humanity thrives and guardians protect. If there's another last city, we have to assume that the dreaming city and the resettlements don't count, or else this would obviously be a truth and wouldn't be much of a puzzle. But what about the place Lady Efrideet mentioned way back in Destiny 1, the Pacifist Colony of Guardians out on the Outer Rim? We know a place like that exists because she talks about it, but of course she refused to speak of its location. And Shiro 4 specifically mentions that he can't believe a place like that could remain completely hidden. But you bet your booty it could remain completely hidden if Rasputin deemed it so. We have to remember Rasputin's main priority is keeping humanity safe, just on his own terms. And the guardians of the Pacifist Colony would have to be kept hidden and safe in order to keep outside threats from barging on their door and forcing them to take up arms. So the Nefele Stronghold very well could be where a powerful weapon is stored, or a copy of Rasputin himself, or a safe haven for humanity completely separate from any danger. Or what if it's all three? If Rasputin wanted to save a copy of himself somewhere, he'd probably want to save it someplace where it's safe from the power hungry or from the darkness itself. The perfect place for that would be within a pacifist colony that nobody even know exists. We know Rasputin is corrupted. Somewhere we need to help him. A copy of him might be the answer we need to transfer him into the exo frame. Nefele means cloud. The cloud is where data is stored. The Greek nymph with the same name is known for taking her children to somewhere safe. And Lady Efrideet talks constantly about a safe colony full of pacifist guardians that nobody knows exists. And nobody would know of its existence if Rasputin was protecting it. It all connects. And get this, there's even another lore entry tying to the farewell sidearm from Season the Splicer that we haven't even talked about yet. The lore entry details a guardian recording audio logs for their lover after a tragic failed civilian escort mission. The last recorded message of this lore entry reads, "If I find you, you'll never hear this. But if I don't, and I live, being here has opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I can't fight like this anymore. Not without you. There's an enclave out past the Jovians. Pacifists. You'll find me there." This is the first time we hear that this guardian enclave is out past the Jovians, giving us a slightly more specific location. We know this enclave and the colony Lady Efrideet speaks of are one and the same, because past the Jovians is also out on the Outer Rim, the previously hidden location of this hidden place. Not only that, there's a large asteroid that actually exists in real life with the name 431 Nefele. It's too coincidental, guys. So we know Rasputin will be the focal point of the story sometime soon. Bungie's been teasing that with new lore throughout the season and expansion releases. Not only that, but Lady Efrideet has had the same treatment, lore released alongside each expansion. The Iron Lords and Rasputin have a deep history together, with both Efrideet and Rasputin's stories being fleshed out over the last few years. The narrative threads point to both of them returning to the spotlight at the same time, connecting in some way. And considering that we know that Iron Banner is getting a rework in Season 17, we've already been told to turn in our bounties, spend our tokens before the final week of Iron Banner, as we'll be getting that vendor system for our Iron Banner. We also know from Joe Blackburn on Twitter from a thread long ago that Season 17 will introduce a brand new Crucible map, and they're working on multiple new Crucible modes for 2022. And guess what? Lord Saladin is off working for Kaido now because of what happened with the Crow. And Lord Saladin mentions that Kaido had some ideas for the Iron Banner changes, which is definitely interesting because we already know that big changes are coming next season, but this of course gives narrative to that. But this does line up perfectly with Destiny's past. During Destiny 1 Rise of Iron, Lady Efrideet took Saladin's place running the Iron Banner because he was busy with the Siva. Now, Lord Saladin is busy with Kaido. And we already have all these story threads that tie Lady Efrideet into returning. And there's no better time for her to return to take Lord Saladin's place once again in running the Iron Banner. It all matches up too perfectly to not happen. Now, we're reaching a bit probably, but that's the fun part about new content. It gives us room to speculate about what cool stuff we could see in the future. And sometimes I feel like I enjoy the weeks leading up to a drop more than actually playing it when it launches. Bungie devs have also been very hyped about next season's story on Twitter as well. I think we're all pretty much under the impression that this season's story was pretty good, but now we're being told that next season is going to be even better. That just gives us more to speculate, even grander possibilities of what the immediate future of Destiny's story looks like. But to keep things realistic, it's totally possible that we get the Iron Banner rework, but Lady Efrideet and Rasputin are nowhere to be found. We may even get a new dungeon in Savannah's Throne World that has nothing to do with the Stronghold. But currently, the narrative threads are pointing in this direction. And And we know how much Bungie likes to start building the groundwork for next season's story before it's even launched. Just look at Savathun and Osiris. Even if these don't get touched on next season, say if Crow and his development into the Hunter Vanguard takes center stage, at the very least, I would expect these narrative threads to be tied off over the course of the next year. We didn't even touch the possibility of Siva returning. After all, Siva was created to build colonies on distant worlds. We know that the ship Exodus Red was carrying a lot of people and a cache of Siva when Rasputin secretly sent it off into the distant space before the collapse, never to be heard of again. Was this the same colony of people that ended up creating the Pacifist Colony Lady Efrideet ends up calling home? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But that's enough wishful thinking from us. Big shout out to Luke and Jarrett for combing through so much lore for this. Either way it goes, the stages are set. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.